everyone. I got here with me Cedric Ramirez. That's a person I first came across when I was watching the Liberty Experts podcast, Tim Moen and David Birnbaum's podcast. And he came on, the first time I seen him, he came on asking a question of the Tim and his guests. I guess it was Bennett Hunter and Brendan Kirby at the time, their opinion of John Calhoun's premise in his book, right? And actually, that book has been I had added to my reading list a while back. I don't know if I'm gonna be purchasing the book anytime soon, but that gives me the impression that you are a bit of a bookworm. Because I don't think that would be first or second choice for most people. So Cedric, first of all, please introduce yourself and how you initially came to be interested in politics, history, or more specifically, political theory.
Okay. Well, just this year, I graduated from the University of Guelph with a Bachelor of Science in Biological and Medical Physics. But yeah, I never did a political or history course. I was just interested in reading books, and I'd say maybe 2017, 2018, I stumbled upon the Mises Institute. I was interested in politics even before that. I actually really got interested with started watching Alex Jones, and I don't know, he's had quite a few guests over the years. But this was when he still had a YouTube channel, and I don't know, he had a lot of people. One guy he had on, his name was Tom Woods.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, yeah. I know Tom Woods. That was way back in the day, eh? When they had a conversation together.
Yeah, I watched a YouTube video of Tom Woods and Alex Jones together. They were Tom Woods was on his show, and it was back in 2009, and they were discussing the economic crisis at the time, the recession of 2008.
Yeah.
And how the government was the government's role in the crisis. And I know he wrote Tom Woods wrote a book called Meltdown.
Yeah, I own that book actually.
Oh yeah, I have the audiobook. I haven't started listening to it yet, but yeah, I listened today, well, partly because I saw Tom Woods on Alex Jones. I listened to Tom Woods' podcast. Well, I mean, he has over 1,000 episodes. I don't think I've watched them all. I'm not even sure if I've watched half of them. I've watched a lot, but yeah, he's one of my influences that I recently read Tom Woods' book Nullification, which came out in 2010. This was around the time Obamacare was being pushed through the Congress, and well, he in Nullification, I don't think he used the word Obamacare, but he was basically advocating that the states better nullify it should it pass, because this intrusion into healthcare, there's the premise of nullification. He goes back. Tom Woods goes back to 1798 with the Alien and Sedition Acts, and then the Thomas Jefferson and James Madison got Thomas Jefferson was the vice president at the time, and I think James Madison had recently just left the United States Congress, but they were both against the Alien and Sedition Acts. The Alien Acts, there were three acts, and they uh they regulated aliens as in immigrants,
Hmm.
and but the Sedition Act
Not a
was
popular
the
term
biggest.
anymore, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, but the Sedition Act was the real big one. It because it suppressed the free speech of people, because you basically couldn't criticize the president or the Congress, and they wrote it in such a way as you could they used the words like president or the Congress because Thomas Jefferson was the vice president at the time, so
Hmm.
you could criticize him. I mean, the elections, the presidential elections were different at the time, because in 1796, how it worked was the president was the one who got the most electoral votes, and then the vice president was the one who got the second most, because each elector got two votes, and it was and like the common understanding was that one guy from one of the parties is supposed to waste his vote on a different guy, so that the the two guy so that the running mate of the party's nominee doesn't tie with uh with his with his partner, as in like um
So
but
would they have a running mate
yeah,
during the election campaigns, or
yeah, so like the okay, because the two parties at the time, uh the the Federalists and the Republicans, like, okay, the Federalists had run uh John Adams, who was vice president under George Washington, and I forgot the name of his running mate, but the the Republicans had run Thomas Jefferson, and his running mate was Aaron Burr. But it for a lot of the electors of both parties did not vote for the running mate, when it was really like everyone except one guy was supposed to vote for the running mate
hmm.
from like a party,
Hmm.
but so but how it ended up was John Adams became president and Thomas Jefferson became vice president, because John Adams got the biggest amount of votes, and then Thomas Jefferson got the second amount of votes.
Hmm.
But so yeah, Tom Woods in his book Nullification uh, talks about the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions. These are the resolutions in the Kentucky and Virginia state houses. Uh, James Madison wrote on wrote wrote a resolution for the Virginia House, and Thomas Jefferson wrote a resolution for the Kentucky House, and the premise of these resolutions, they wrote them separately. The two of them didn't know that they were writing like um resolutions, but they were writing them at the same time, like, if you know what I mean. And and well, they were saying, Thomas Jefferson's first impulse was that the Sedition Act violated the First Amendment
Hmm.
because of free speech. But then he came to realize it also violated the 10th Amendment, which says that all powers not delegated to the general government go to the states or the people.
Hmm.
So the argument against the Sedition Acts wasn't just that it violated the First Amendment because of free speech, but that the federal government did not have the power to to even write the Sedition Acts or the Alien Acts. And
Hmm.
then they were saying specifically the state governments can do this because the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments, It's meant to restrict the federal government, not the state governments. So the state governments could do this. Well, I mean, as long as they don't the state governments don't violate their own state constitutions.
Hmm.
So
So Cedric,
yeah.
so Tom Woods appeared on Alex Jones show, and then and then you checked out Tom Woods' own show after that. Is
Uh,
that how you got introduced into this point of view?
it was, well, that was like one of my influences. I still I don't watch Alex Jones too much now.
Yeah,
But
me
I
neither.
used to a lot.
I
I
used to
used
watch
to a
him back
lot.
in the day.
Yeah, but yeah, yeah. I mean, Alex Jones has had a lot of guests, and yeah, Tom Woods was like, I think he's been on more than once, but I remember watching one from 2009, like, uh, and um,
But Tom
yeah,
Woods was the first libertarian that you came across, or was there somebody else
the,
before him?
there was also Stefan Molyneux back when he had a YouTube channel as well. Um,
Hmm.
Stefan Molyneux was also on Alex Jones, and actually Tom Woods also was on Stefan Molyneux
Hmm.
uh on his show, and then they were discussing anarchism, because they're both anarcho-capitalists, and like they were discussing like philo- uh philosophy of not just libertarianism but anarchism.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's a shame Stefan Molyneux doesn't have his own YouTube channel anymore. I think
Hmm.
it's still on, like, he still has a channel on like BitChute, but yeah, he's been censored like Alex Jones.
Hmm. So you picked up Tom Woods' book Nullification, and all of a sudden you found yourself interested in American political history, or?
Yeah, because I got into I also around this time, like 2017 2018, I started I saw some like articles by like the Mises Institute, and then I discovered they have a whole bunch of free books on their website that you can download, either like EPUB PDF, or you can listen to the audiobook.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I started listening to um a bunch of no, to a few books. Um,
How'd you find
I,
out about the Mises Institute, though? Because it's hard to find.
um, I can't know. I'm not. I actually don't remember. Like, I know Maxime Bernier was like posting some of their stuff before, like back in
Oh, really?
2018. But I'm not sure. If, I think I'm not entirely sure if it was through his Twitter that I first discovered the Mises Institute. But they have uh they have a lot of good books on there, and then the people who write articles on their website also have something, a lot of valuable things to say.
Yeah.
And I haven't even read the majority of the free books that they have on their website.
Because some of
But
them are of considerable length, like they got human action on there, they got
yeah,
man economy state on there.
yeah. Uh, and I've well, two of the books the first two of the first books I read on their website was The Progressive Era and The Betrayal of the American Right, both by Murray Rothbard. And first I read The Progressive Era, and like described the America from like late 19th century to the early 20th century,
Hmm.
and talking about how like the like the he Murray Rothbard divided Americans into two types of people. There were the pietist Christians and the liturgical Christians. the liturgical Christians were like Catholics and some like types of Lutherans, and the Pietists were all or a bunch of the different Protestants, and like
Mm.
they voted differently, as in the liturgicals wanted to vote for smaller, at least smaller federal government, and that's why they supported the Democratic Party up until like a certain time, and then the Pietists supported the Republican Party, and the Pietists were the progressives. They're the ones who wanted uh prohibition on alcohol, and they also they were interested in women wanting to vote because Pietist women were just more politically active compared to liturgical women,
Mm.
and so um in the progressive era you have uh Rothbard talks about uh how 1892 was like basically the last time like the Democrats had like a free market um person in uh in the White House. That
Mhm.
was Grover Cleveland. But he talks about how William Jennings Bryan became the Democratic nominee in 1896, and he was very different from Grover Cleveland. Bryan believed in a lot of things. He believed in referendums, which was in stark contrast to the many of the founders of the United States, who you can find quote after quote of them condemning democracy.
Mhm.
But yeah, Bryan believed in referendum. He believed in an income tax,
Mhm.
which well the United States eventually got that, but they didn't have an income tax back in the 1890s. Um, he believed, yeah, in alcohol prohibition, and he believed in women's suffrage, I think.
Mhm.
He and yeah, the United States would get all of those. Well, they would later repeal alcohol prohibition, but these things they were actually like maybe not the income tax, but like the the alcohol prohibition was mostly in the strength of it was mostly in the Republican Party, and
But that was also considered a progressive policy.
yeah,
How come?
the well, I mean, because okay, so the philosophical difference between the liturgicals and the pietists, like the pietists are the ones who believe that in order for Jesus Christ for to have his second coming, you would need to create heaven on earth, so to speak. So you had have to strongly enforce so the pietists strongly enforced wanted to strongly enforce their views of Jesus on the rest of the United States through, and if it and through the central government if possible, and at that time, like, they believed that Jesus Christ would be against alcohol. I mean, I don't think he would, because that time in the Bible, the wedding of Cana, I think he turned water into wine, but
Mm.
but yeah, the the same people who believe that Jesus Christ would be against alcohol, they they're the ones who were pushing women's suffrage. They're the ones who were pushing an income tax. Oh, they're also the ones who were pushing eugenics. Like
Mm.
this same type of people. They're I mean, like, maybe like the progressives. They don't all, like, most of them agreed on like certain set of values, and like these were some of them, like um and it was mostly
So,
in yeah.
so progressivism basically continued to change through the 20th century, and now how we find it in the 21st century. Is that the
Yeah,
case?
we can see Bryan's influence in William Jennings Bryan's influence, because he comes this this party called the People's Party in 1892. They're they were they were they were Western populists, as in, because if you go back to like the 1860s, like the West, I think the West tended to vote Republican because they were anti-slavery. But then um the but then they but see the Republicans, they're descended from the Northern Whigs, and like the Northern Whigs, they wanted to they were against slavery not on moral grounds, but okay, they were against slavery in the territories because they didn't want blacks to compete with white laborers in the West, in the Western territories.
Hmm.
That's why they were okay with Southern slavery. Like, so if blacks stay in the South, they're okay with that. It's the slavery was more of a question of the territories. Who if whether or not blacks would go there to compete with white labor. And well, I mean, this is but like the the reason but so the Westerners who were against slavery, I think they tended to vote with the Republicans, but then they realized that the Republicans were also for like high tariffs, and then they would use these high tariffs, these protectionist tariffs to build stuff, like as like like corporate welfare. They would build what they called internal improvements, like railways and canals, and
Hmm.
so like these in, like the so these tariffs, they were the protectionist tariffs were meant for the the North. I mean, the Northerners were doing this so that their part of the Union would benefit.
Hmm.
So the West realized over the couple of decades, the West realizes this, and so in 1892, you have the Populist Party under James Weaver, and they advocate. If you look up their platform, yeah, they advocate for these progressive policies. Oh, they also believe in direct election of senators, because before the 17th Amendment, they the state legislatures would choose the United States senators.
Hmm.
But now, but
Just like in Germany, I guess, eh?
yeah.
That's how they do it there, yeah.
But now they but after the 17th Amendment, because they choose the people choose the Senate, the senators. They're directly elected, and this was considered to be more democratic, even though
Hmm.
many of the founders were they they were against giving the masses too much power. And so oh, and the People's Party also advocated for free silver, because they they wanted to you know um have print no, I won't it was coin as many silver coins, and like, I mean,
Hmm.
this would later, but like this would like later, you would see this influence later in the creation of the Federal Reserve, which they print
Hmm.
out.
So was silver outlawed back then, or
Or
was
I
it
mean,
just strictly the
this was
gold
in
standard? Or?
yeah, this was in contrast to the gold standard, because yeah, Grover Cleveland believed in the gold standard. And
Hmm.
so and yeah, the People's Party in 1892, they won five states in the West. And William Jennings Bryan in 1896, he would go on to represent the People's Party and the Democratic Party in the 1896 election. So
Hmm.
the 1896 election was a big election, because you have Brian, who advocates for all these progressive reforms, and then in the Democratic side, and then you have Republicans who are I mean, they nominated William McKinley, who would win the presidency, and he was considered more of a moderate. Rothbard talks about how he wasn't as spoken, like he wasn't as strong on prohibition. He was so like some people who were against prohibition thought it was okay to vote for McKinley because William Jennings Bryan was a much more stronger advocate for prohibition.
Hmm.
And yeah.
Cedric, so these
Yeah.
two books you read, Betrayal of the American Right and The Rise of the Progressive, what was it? The Rise of the Progressive Era?
No. Oh no, it was just the progressive era. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I was just
Uh,
describing the progressive era. Yeah.
uh, how much do you think it applies to the history of Canada, or how we
Um.
find the political divide in Canada?
Yeah. Well, Rothbard doesn't really talk about this, but this is tied. But the
Just from
Western,
your experience.
yeah, the Western populist progressives, you can see them in the CCF, the cooperative. Oh God, I forgot their name. They're the ancestors of the NDP.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were, yeah, they believed in, um they were more populists, progressives. Like they were, although they were, I think they were more, they were, how do I say this? They were more embracive of the socialist label actually than the current NDP.
Hmm.
And they were strong in the West. You would have as you know, Tommy Douglas. He was the CCF premier of Saskatchewan, and
Hmm.
he believed in, more government intervention, just like the Western populists in the United States. And he believed, and his but what he's most famous for, the socialist universal health care in Saskatchewan. And then
Hmm.
when the NDP, like, he was premier back in like the 40s and I think
Hmm.
50s, and then in uh in the 60s he gets a seat at in the in the federal parliament.
Hmm.
And like in 1961 is when like the CCF merges with the Canadian Labor Congress and becomes the New Democratic Party, the NDP. And
Hmm.
you see the and so he gets a seat in, like, the NDP, like the CCF become the NDP in the Canadian Parliament. And when and you would see his influence strongly in from like 63 to 68, because 1963 was when the Liberals got a minority, and under Lester Pearson was the prime minister. And so he they were so I think they were leaning on the support of the NDP, because it was a minority government. You gotta work with enough of the other parties to get a majority of the seats to pass legislation. And
Hmm.
you would see that Tommy Douglas's, as a leader of the NDP, he would use his influence to get universal health care passed in across Canada. So now each of the provinces have basically a socialist healthcare system.
Hmm.
And you would see this. I mean, this is a result of Tommy Douglas's CCF premiership.
Hmm.
Um, well, I haven't talked about the betrayal of the American right. This is more. This was more of a. I would guess this. I would say this is more closer to like a biography of Murray Rothbard, because it takes place a lot during his lifetime.
Hmm.
He talks about how, like, okay, the there was this there was the right and left meant certain things in the United States before Franklin Roosevelt became the president, because I think it was
So
understood that,
something
like,
different than how we understand it today.
yeah, I think like well, I mean, it had to do with the word, with how the way the word liberal is used, because
Hmm.
in 1932 Franklin Roosevelt campaigns on campaigns on like lower spending, and
Hmm.
like he's like, because the incumbent president Herbert Hoover, the he was heavily in market interventionist.
Yeah.
It was around the Great Depression, and so uh Franklin Roosevelt, he yeah, so this is what he's campaigning on. He's campaigning on smaller government, on less spending, and he's saying that he was saying that Herbert Hoover um was intervening too much with he's with in the market, and that's how he was campaigning in his first election.
Hmm.
But when he actually gets into power, he builds on the market interventionism. He and like Franklin Roosevelt, he called himself like a liberal, or at least like his allies did. And so the term before that, the term liberal, was, back meant, you know in the original European sense, the smaller government.
But
But
how about prior to Roosevelt, though? How about like someone like Wilson, Woodrow Wilson? Would he have considered himself a liberal?
I I'm not sure, because what Wilson is known for, his foreign policy is called liberal internationalism.
Hmm.
And um but I think, like, back in when Woodrow Wilson was still alive, they used the term progressive more. But liberal internationalism was basically, um in going across the world to spread democracy,
Hmm.
which was actually kind of similar to, Woodrow Wilson was, like, I guess you could say he was kind of influenced by British politics, because in the United Kingdom, decades before Wilson became president, there was this man called Lord Palmerston. He was a liberal prime minister, as in, like, under the Liberal Party, or and then, like, even before that, the Whig Party. Um, but I can talk about the creation of the Liberal Party later. But uh, Palmerston's foreign policy was known as liberal interventionism,
Hmm.
and so I think that had influence with Woodrow Wilson, and as you may know, like,
So Britain
Franklin
tried to
Wilson.
do the same thing,
uh
trying to spread democracy. Was that their objective before?
yeah, that was, yeah, try to spread freedom and democracy, basically.
Hmm.
um and I mean, he I mean, Franklin Roosevelt did learn from Woodrow Wilson. Like, Roosevelt was like the assistant secretary of the Navy under
Hmm.
Wilson, and he learned, like, because Wilson when Wilson got into World War I, he he did heavy central planning of the economy. Like, people call it war socialism,
Hmm.
because yeah, he used the war as a pretense to have to do heavy market intervention, to like, even before the war. Well, I mean, even before, like, he was already doing some like non-free market stuff. before the war, but like he really got into it because after America got into World War I, and Franklin Roosevelt learned about this, and I mean this was his influence. He was influenced by this, and like the betrayal of the American right talks about how the Republican Party became like the main opposition to Franklin Roosevelt. Well, I mean, yeah, because they're the other party, but like against the New Deal, because that's what they called Franklin Roosevelt's economics and his programs.
Yeah.
And uh he and like the biggest critic of Roosevelt was Franklin Roosevelt was Senator Robert Taft, whom Ron Paul really admires.
Hmm.
He because Robert Taft was he was yeah he was against most of the interventionism that you would get from uh, from Roosevelt and then later Truman. But Rothbard was like I would say I think during Harry Truman's administration he was in the Republican Party.
Hmm.
and he
No, I
left the
never knew that.
Republican. Yeah, he left the Republican Party in '52 because Robert Taft lost the nomination to Eisenhower, and
So he was
Eisen
working on helping him on his campaign or something?
I think he was like he was one of the delegates to the RNC. Rothbard was
Hmm.
one of the yeah he although he is critical of Robert Taft in some like he says that he compromised a lot and that actually the strength of what he called the old right was in the Republicans in the House, and one of them was actually Howard Buffett. The billionaire Warren Buffett, right?
Yeah.
That's his father, Howard Buffett. He was
Oh.
good friends with Rothbard was good friends with Buffett, and Howard Buffett was a lot more of a free market guy than Warren Buffett.
Hmm.
Um,
He wasn't able to transmit that to his son.
uh, no, I don't know. He like I haven't read many books by like Warren Buffett. Like
Yeah, me
I'm
neither.
like, but like he I think, but like Howard Buffett was definitely more like he believed in like the gold standard. Like I'm not sure how much gold like Warren Buffett currently has. Like I'm sure he has some, but like
Hmm. Well, I heard he's got
um
into it.
yeah.
At least, I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Schiff. He was talking about Warren Buffett getting into buying gold recently.
Oh, recently, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the Betrayal of the American Right, he goes like it's like Rothbard talks about himself all the way until the 70s. How like in the 60s, like 64, he actually does not support Barry Goldwater because Barry Goldwater he perceived Barry Goldwater to be too pro war because like the Vietnam War was going on and he thought that Goldwater would be more aggressive. No, would be much more pro war than Lyndon Johnson.
Hmm.
And even though and he said he believed Barry Goldwater was lackluster in free market economics, and this goes like I think Goldwater this is part like due to his in Barry Goldwater's book The Conscience of a Conservative. He gets into the last chapter of that book from 1960, The Conscience of a Conservative. He gets the into how the United States should be very strongly fighting against communism, and it kind of it looked it kind of after I read that book, I was like, this last chapter kind of undermines the rest of the book, because the first part of the book was all about small government, and like goes into different topics about how the federal government should be small. But then you have this last chapter, and it talks about how we should do everything we can do to fight communism. And I'm like, this is undermining the main the most of your book. But I think Goldwater was heavily influenced by the creation of the magazine National Review by William F. Buckley Jr. back in 1955. And Rothbard talks about how many of these guys were ex-communists, ex-Trotskyites. So yeah, specifically followers of Trotsky. They didn't like Stalin, so they thought that fighting the Soviet Union was fighting Stalinism. So that was kind of their mentality. And William F. Buckley Jr., he said, we're going to have to accept big government for the time until we can get rid of communism. There's a quote in Rothbard's book talking about what William F. Buckley Jr. said. And so this is to today's United States Republican Party. Even though the Soviet Union is dead, you see that the right has become is still pro-war. Well, most right wingers are pro-war in the Congress.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the main that influence was like Murray Rothbard calls it a takeover of the right. He calls this the new right because the guys who are so zealous about fighting communism have taken over the American right. And so
are they known as the neocons, or is that denote a different group of people?
I guess you can call them the neocons. He barely, like Rothbard, I think he used the term like once or twice in the book. But like,
I think the original Republicans, they used to call them just the old Republicans, I guess, eh?
Well, okay. When I think of old Republicans, I think of a different group of people there, because one guy I really like, his name, one congressman I really like, his name was John Randolph of Roanoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his he called he was originally, he was an ally of Thomas Jefferson, who was from the Republican Party. Like I'm not talking about the GOP. Like this is the original, like from the two-party system, the first two-party system. And over the course of Thomas Jefferson's presidency, Thomas Jefferson does like a lot of big government stuff.
Did he?
Even though, well, the main one that people remember him for, the main big government thing he did was the Embargo Act of 1807 that he signed, which it killed trade with all countries, because they were trying to. Great Britain and France were in a war. And then, but like they were attacking American ships to see if Britain was attacking like American ships to see if there were any Frenchmen on board. And like, yeah, France was doing like the same thing to American ships. So like Thomas Jefferson wanted them to stop. So he said, how about we just stop all trade? And it completely screwed over the economy. Like a lot of people hated him for it, including.
Was it just with those two countries, or
no, with all countries. Yeah, they were.
Oh wow.
With all, even though like they Great Britain and France were the problem, but this was one of the big things that I don't
think we give too much credit to Thomas Jefferson. Because I know there's this other guy named Albert J. Nock. You probably heard of him.
Yeah,
He's
I've read.
written a book on Thomas Jefferson as well. I was
Oh,
considering getting it.
okay. I've only read Our Enemy the State by Albert J. Nock, which is on the Mises Institute.
Oh, I see. But if
But
Thomas Jefferson
yeah.
was alive today, would we characterize him as a libertarian or not?
Um, he was strong. Well, okay, his presidency wasn't perfect. Um, but if you want to talk about like outside the presidency, probably yeah. Although like okay, he did advocate for some like non-libertarian things. He believed that the state governments should uh the state should provide like a rudimentary education, like not university, but like maybe up until like high school, what would be high school. Like he believed in that was the role of the state, but like
Hmm.
in providing some form of education.
Hmm.
Um, but like to compare to like 20th century or 21st century politicians, yeah, he's definitely much more of a small government guy,
Hmm.
of a libertarian.
Not to say Ron Paul, though, eh?
Um, hold on. Like it's it
Does
like
it
I
get
think
smaller than
Ron
Ron
Paul
Paul
is.
in government?
No,
In
I
the
think
perspective of
he's.
government?
I mean, I think I don't know because Ron Paul's never been president because
Hmm.
like Ron Paul's only been like one vote in the legislature, right? So
Hmm.
I would say, but like if I had to guess, like if Ron Paul ever became president, maybe he'd be better than Jefferson, maybe. But
Hmm.
uh oh okay but I think yeah, maybe Ron Paul would be better than him, but I'm not entirely sure
Hmm.
because
Do you
like
think some other figure in American history could be a better candidate to be considered a libertarian than Jefferson? Like, how was Andrew Jackson or
okay,
some others?
Andrew Jackson was a lot worse than Jefferson because Andrew Jackson was okay in 1824 he was well in 1828 when he was trying to when he was running for president he was trying to market himself as a Jeffersonian.
Hmm.
Thomas Jefferson actually did not Andrew Jackson. He there's a quote if you can find it. It starts with Jefferson refers to him as General Jackson because that was because well I mean he was most famous as a general before he became president,
Hmm.
and he said General Jackson is power hungry and I wouldn't trust him.
Hmm.
And Jackson was trying to sell himself as a Jeffersonian because he was against a central bank. But he's worse than Jefferson because he wanted a higher tariff. No, I mean he was more.
Higher tariff than an embargo? How is that possible?
Well, okay, no, not maybe not like I mean like maybe like okay if you compare the first term, okay, because this is the embargo happens in the second term of Jefferson's presidency. So okay, if you
How many did
compare.
he serve? How many terms?
Oh yeah, Jefferson and Jackson both served 2 terms, but like Jackson only
Oh,
served these 2 terms after Jefferson had already died of old age. So Jefferson never criticized his presidency. So
hmm.
like if you're gonna compare like the first Jefferson's first pres term to Jackson, Andrew Jackson, okay, but he was elected. Okay, he was running against John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams, he was a former Federalist, like his father, John Adams. Like John Adams, you know, was the rival of Thomas Jefferson. They
Hmm.
ran against each other. But John Quincy Adams actually became he joined Jefferson's party during the embargo. So and uh he so the election of 1824, you have you have four men, all Republicans, who were trying to obtain the presidency because well, the Federalists had like died, like the war during the War of 1812 there was they had this conference, I forgot the name. I think it was the Hampton Roads Conference. I forgot, but they were in New England. The North was strongly opposed to the war. In fact, they were trading with the British, which I don't know if you want to call it treason, because they
Mm.
because the because the United States was at war with Great Britain. But
Mm.
the Federalists died because people
I mean,
people
trading
found
with
out.
Britain would be quite easy the way. I mean, Canada was Britain basically back then, eh?
Yeah. So the war, because people found out that that the Northeastern Federalists were thinking about secession, the Federalist Party died because the Northeastern Federalists wanted to secede. Well, some of them wanted to secede. The fact that they were talking about it killed their party.
Mm.
So by 1824, the Federalists had died, and you have four men, Thomas Jefferson and okay, I'll tell before wait, but I'll tell you on how I should start by saying the four men were John Quincy Adams, who was the son of the Federalist president John Adams. You had Henry Clay, who you had Will Henry Clay was the Speaker of the House. You have uh, William H. Crawford, the Secretary of the Treasury, and you had Andrew Jackson, who okay, John Quincy Adams was the Secretary of State, and okay, so how that 1824 played out was okay. Thomas, how do I say this? The back then, the part how the parties would be nominated were I think the Congress chose the nominee. So like the Republicans, the Republican congressmen, they all endorsed um William H. Crawford, and so did Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, the former Republican presidents. And because William H. Crawford seemed to be the strongest on states' rights, he was the strongest decentralist. Um, and the Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams believed they were closer to Alexander Hamilton, who was also one of Thomas Jefferson's rivals. Uh, from the Federalist Party. Alexander Hamilton was dead by this time, but Alexander Hamilton believed in like three core things. He believed in a national bank, a high tariff, a high protectionist tariff, and then use the money from the tariff for internal improvements or corporate welfare for roads, bridges, canals, etc. And so no one gets in 1824. Nobody gets the Electoral College, and the sorry, I'm blanking here. So okay, the top three guys, the election is thrown into the House of Representatives, where the top three guys who vote getters get the most. The House of Representatives decides among the three who gets the presidency. And Henry Clay was fourth, but he was the Speaker of the House, so he was out of the running. But he made people call it the corrupt bargain because he told he basically shifted the House of Representatives election to John Quincy Adams. He used his influence as Speaker to tell people to vote for John Quincy Adams, and that's how John Quincy Adams became president. But and this was called the corrupt bargain because they would because John Quincy Adams gave him Secretary of State, and the last three presidents, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, they were all Secretary of State before they became president. And so going so John Quincy Adams passes signs into law the Tariff of Abominations, Well, that's what it was called. It was the Tariff of 1828. But then it comes into a and then he loses the election to Jackson. So I know you were asking about Jackson, whether Jackson would be a good libertarian, and here's why he wouldn't, because he people thought that in the 1828 election, people thought that he was more sympathetic to states' rights than John Quincy Adams, and although he was against the bank, he in 1832 they passed a slightly lower tariff because they were the South, especially South Carolina. South Carolina was the state who was advocating the most for a lower tariff. So Andrew Jackson signs into law a slightly lower tariff. When I say sign into law, it means the Congress passed it and then he signed it. But then South Carolina did not believe it was low enough, so they nullified it, the tariff, and then chief among the resistance to this tariff was the Vice President John C. Calhoun. He was actually Vice President under John Quincy Adams, and then he shifted his side to Andrew Jackson. So he was Vice President under two different guys, under two different presidents, and he was the John C. Calhoun who was from South Carolina, was the chief voice against the Tariff of Abominations, and so South Carolina legislature nullified the tariffs, both the tariff of 1828 and the slightly lower tariff in 1832. And then Andrew Jackson says, no, nullification is you can't do this. He said nullification is unconstitutional, and then he said, and he believed nullification would lead to secession, but and so he in 1833 he signed the force bill, which said that he could send the troops to force South Carolina to collect the tariff. But so this was called the nullification crisis, and John C. Calhoun, he resigned from the vice presidency, and to become a senator and because he thought he would resist it better in the Senate, and also like he wasn't going to get renominated with Andrew Jackson, but because of his opposition to one of the reasons why was because of his opposition to the Tariff of Abominations, but this crisis is solved because Henry Clay, who's back in Congress, he's now a senator. He crafts the compromise tariff of 1833, which would gradually lower the tariff over the course of 10 years, and so the Union was saved because of this compromise tariff. Both Jackson and South Carolina were okay with this compromise. I mean, I say it was saved, but like later, South Carolina is the first to secede in 1860 because they know Abraham Lincoln was a protectionist. But if I'm gonna say like someone who much more fits like the libertarian label, I'd say it would be Jackson's successor, Martin Van Buren, because Jackson.
What town was he from?
Sorry?
What years did he live in? The 19th or 18th or century?
Okay. He's 19th century politician. He was the first president born an American. He was born in 1782, and he died in 1862 during the war. But as president, he there was this. The Panic of 1837 happened because he won the presidency in 1836, riding the coattails of Andrew Jackson, and he he believed in he also believed in like separation of banking and the federal government.
Hmm.
And when the Panic of 1837 hit, which was like one of the it was one of the biggest, like, I would say, I don't know if you want to call it a depression back then. It he didn't increase the size of the government. I think he because like it would have been like tempting for some other guys to raise tariffs to or something to do some market intervention to fight the panic, but he didn't. And this is this is one of Murray Rothbard's. I think you can find a video of Murray Rothbard talking about his favorite presidents. His first favorite president is Martin Van Buren, because
Oh,
he
okay.
was
Has this guy written any books, Van Buren?
I'm not sure if he's written any books. Like he was a lot less skeptical of. He was more embracive of democracy than some of the founders, Martin Van Buren, and because Rothbard was more embracive of populism, in the sense that because two of his favorite presidents were both or Martin Van Buren and Grover Cleveland, and both these guys even though they were free market, but they were actually not that skeptical of democracy, because they were relying on that being against central banking, being for the free market, was popular among the electorate. There and actually, I guess you could see this is you could see this in the Liberal Party in the United Kingdom in like the mid to late 19th century, because one of the prime minister, one of the Liberal prime ministers, he was elected prime minister 4 separate terms. William Gladstone, like he was very much in favor of democracy. He was when he was prime minister, he was strongly in favor of giving more votes, like because back then, like early 19th century and even before that, there was a property requirement. Like there wasn't universal male suffrage. There was you had to own property to become in order to vote, and that was actually the case in like early 19th century America as well. But yeah, the like Gladstone, I think, is kind of similar to Grover Cleveland and Martin Van Buren. I would say those two presidents are kind of like those are like Murray Rothbard's favorite presidents, at least in the 19th century.
Now, Cedric, you talked about the betrayal of the American right, based on Rothbard's book. What can you tell us about the betrayal of the Conservative Party of Canada?
Okay. Well, we have to look at I mean, I can start from the very beginning. Well, I mean, from 1867. Okay, so although conservatives like today, the Conservative Party of Canada today talks about how it's free market. I mean, it's not. I don't believe it is. But if you're gonna look, okay, we can look at what the I want to start at like the beginning of Canada, of the Canadian Confederation, 1867. You have like the two-party system mirrored. It was kind of started like the Conservative Liberal duopoly was started. Well, was present in 1867, but it mirrored the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom, you have a two-party system for a long time. They were called the Tories and the Whigs, and the Tories became the Conservative Party under Sir Robert Peel, it was founded on the Tamworth Manifesto because this document, it was called the Tamworth Manifesto because Robert Peel's riding was Tamworth, and the Liberal Party was
What does
created.
Tamworth mean?
Sorry, it was a riding. It was a riding. I mean, I think it was like a town. They
Oh, I
call
see.
so yeah. Robert Peel was from Tamworth, so
Oh, I
Robert
see.
Peel, and but his party fractured. The conservative. So at this time, there was conservatives and Whigs now. Well, I mean, there were these small groups of individuals called the radicals, who were but the Conservative Party fractured under the repeal of the corn laws, and these were protectionist tariffs that were making it hard for people to buy food, especially poor people,
Hmm.
and um Sir Robert Peel, he was in favor of repealing these corn laws, but 2/3 of his party was against it, and
Hmm.
so he they were able to repeal the corn laws only with the help of the opposition, the Whigs and the radicals,
Hmm.
and but because of this, his government fell. Sir Robert Peel's government fell, and after he died, like a few years after he died, well, okay, I mean, well, when he was alive, the party split, the Conservative Party, and then what were called the Peelites. They were, or they also called themselves liberal conservatives. And after he died, uh, the radicals, the Whigs, and the Peelites merged together to become the Liberal Party. So the Liberal Party, at the start, at its founding in Great Britain, was supposed to be the free market party,
Hmm.
and so okay, so this conservative liberal thing, this duopoly, was is mirrored in Canada, although the conservative and liberal parties are descended from different people. Um, the liberals are descended from uh, the Parti Rouge in Canada East, or Lower Canada, or Quebec, and then in Upper Canada you have the Clear Grits, these the Reformers, and so in 1867 they're led by uh, George Brown, but he doesn't win his seat. So and yeah, the Conservatives, they called themselves, they were descended from the Parti Bleu in Quebec, and then I think from like the Family Compact in in uh in Upper Canada, in Ontario. And I mean, okay, but I mean, I don't know like exactly like everything they stood for, but well, what these certain factions before the conservative liberal duopoly, but the Conservative Party then, under Sir John A. Macdonald, he was the leader of the Conservatives for until he until he died in 1891. And
Hmm.
the Conservatives, they were the crony capitalists. They were kind of like Alexander Hamilton. They believed in a strong tariff against the United States. Well, I mean, they were in favor of free trade with Great Britain, but a tariff against the United States, and then use the money of the tariff for internal improvements, or McDonald's famous for the railway
Hmm.
from from Eastern Canada to British Columbia, and his policy, um he lost the election in 1872 or 1873 to the Liberals, to Alexander Mackenzie, who was the leader of the Liberals, who I mean who became eventually Liberal Prime Minister, the second. But then he won back the government from Mackenzie, and then was prime minister from like 78 until his death in 91. And he campaigned on, in 1878, the national policy. This economic policy was was uh was it's called national policy, but yeah, it only benefits a certain group. It benefits Ontario and Montreal. The rest of the country did not do so well under these tariffs and the corporate welfare.
Ontario and Quebec, or particularly
Or
Montreal?
particularly Montreal. Yeah, yeah. But
But do you think Canada would have been possible without, say, the national policy? Do you think, or would the trading routes, they would have continued in the north-south direction? Because I think that's what most people preferred, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would eventually have in 88, because 1988 you would have Brian Mulroney signed the trade agreement with Ronald Reagan. But that is the complete, that's the highest that's the that was maybe the peak of trade between the United States and, well, I don't know. Well, I mean, up until that point, because yeah, they were trade among north south trade between Canada and the United States was never very high until 1988. So for conservatives, for most of the conservative movement's history, it wasn't free markets. It was crony capitalism. And Sir Wilfrid Laurier, he became prime minister. He became prime minister, the Liberal prime minister, in 1896. Well, partly because Macdonald died, and then there were four different guys who succeeded him, and then they all lasted a year. They didn't last very long, each of them. And it's not, they didn't die. They I don't know. Their party kicked them out for different reasons. I can't remember their names because Laurier, unfortunately, Laurier says he won't repeal the national policy in 1896 when he's campaigning. So although he was personally against it, this is a compromise that lasts his entire premiership, because in 1911 he wants a free trade deal. Now he wants a free trade deal, and so this is 15 years into his premiership, and he wants a free trade deal with the United States, and then Sir Robert Borden is now the conservative leader, and attacks him for it, because the conservatives are saying you're going to be absorbed by the United States. We're going to be annexed by the United States if you do this free trade deal. And so people voted for Borden, for Borden's conservatives, and so we didn't. So because Laurier he chose to, because he lost 1911 election on the promise of a trade agreement with the United States. Yeah, you would have this trade protectionism against the United States for several decades more, until
now, Cedric, if I could bring it back to the 21st century.
Okay.
What do you think is effective in extending the message of liberty to more people? Is it books? Is it the party? Is it podcasts? What do you think works? And do you think we're going to witness the idea of a free society in our lifetime?
I don't think I'm really skeptical about our lifetime, because many things, just because of the universal socialist healthcare system is worshipped by
not just in Canada, in the world general.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not sure, because it's it comes because I don't know. Socialism is even though the Soviet Union is dead, the Soviet Union is still fighting the culture war. You know, they they uh want they still want like governments around the world. If you look at the coronavirus response, you'll see that governments around the world are using this as a pretense for strong central planning. In a similar way, like war already does this, but
Yeah.
but yeah, war by itself has already made it so that you have strong central planning. But like now, but with the coronavirus, which has like a very high survival rate, there's still countries are still locking down. I
Mm.
mean, and so I don't know because people say the the virus shows the response to the lockdown shows politicians true colors,
Hmm.
because you'll find I think a lot of people, a lot of politicians who before the lockdown, they were paying lip service to freedom, but
Hmm.
but like not anymore with the lockdowns. I don't, so now I don't even know. So I'm not optimistic about the future, because just because you know the
But don't you
lockdown.
think in some red states or in countries like Sweden, they weren't that hard on the lockdowns?
Uh, yes,
That's
some
a source
pockets
of
of the
hope.
world. Yeah, some pockets of the world. I mean, you can. I mean, I have my like. If you I mean, I do like what Sweden did, although like Sweden isn't exactly. I won't say it's libertarian in the sense that they have high taxes so that they pay for their social programs, for their healthcare system and for their education. They have high taxes for that. So I don't know
Mm.
if people if libertarians would like that.
Mm.
And
But I mean,
uh,
in just one aspect, I think they got it right.
yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't they don't they didn't kill they didn't shut down their economy for a virus that has like a 99% survival rate, or at least
Mm.
99% among people who are not old,
Mm.
because like it's
Now, Cedric,
mostly. Yeah.
the first part of the question was, what do you think are the effective avenues to extend the
Okay.
message of liberty to more people?
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure because like if you're like, I think young people it seems to be the internet,
Mm.
because I don't know about how much time old people spend on the internet, because like the
Mm.
internet is only like 3 decades old.
Mm.
So like if you're talking about like spreading among old people, like I don't know if like the internet is the best way forward. Like you can tell people, you can tell old people to read books on history and philosophy and
Mm.
economics, and like, but I think old people, like people born long before the creation of the internet, they're I don't know if like, yeah, if like the internet is gonna be
And
for young
they're,
people, yeah.
most of them, they're already established in their beliefs, so it's going to be difficult to make them
Yeah.
change it.
So the thing about but the thing about like the internet, people talk about this tech monopoly, right?
Mm.
Um, well, I mean, uh, I think from what I understand, monopolies don't exist in the free market. Like they can't exist in the free market. What's happening is uh, tech monopolies get favorable government intervention. That's like that. I mean, I haven't studied how, but I'm gonna assume that the government is helping tech monopolies exist, like helping them stay monopolies, like
Mm.
because yeah, people say it's far leftists who control the monopoly, the tech monopoly. So and then yeah, then they censor they censor people they don't. The far left censors people they don't agree with
Mm.
on the internet. So if like the way I see it, like if people it in order for young people to better do this, to better spread the message of liberty to young people, I think the tech monopolies have to like you have to remove the things, the government interventions that make them have tech monopolies,
Mm.
and and then what you'll have, I think there will be less censorship. I mean, because I know like what some right wingers say is that because they have because there is a tech monopoly, we have to use we have to use the the government to fight back. But so you have to be careful. If you're increasing the size of the government to fight back, then that's not a good idea. I think
Mm.
we have to figure out a way to uh to get this more of a free market, so that we have a more free market set of ideas on the internet.
Mm.
Um,
But I mean, in the last couple of years, out of nowhere, a program like Snapchat came about, a program like TikTok came about. So hopefully in the next several years into the future, we'll see something that will compete with Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Do you think that's
yeah,
possible?
yeah. There's already some competition. Like like there are like websites and applications. They keep popping up over, and they will continue to pop up. And I think that's good. Like how we have more, and but I haven't like really looked into it, but it's I don't but because there's no monopoly, because there is a monopoly on like big, for some of the big companies, or maybe it's not a monopoly, because monopoly means only one, so oligopoly among the big tech companies. Like right now, like what needs to happen is we need to head towards a freer market of ideas on the internet, and the way to do that is I don't know, the government. I mean, it's mostly the United States that these companies were established in, but the so I guess the United States would have to figure out why they have what government actions were created to were done in order to have this monopoly.
Mm.
Um,
All
but
right,
I
Cedric.
know, yeah.
Thanks for your time, eh? We exceeded an hour.
Oh
We got
yeah.
to discuss a lot about the history of the United States, some about Canada, and then ended with the some discussion on 21st century issues.
Okay.
So maybe mention what your Twitter page is, Twitter handle.
At Illuminatorum. It's at ILLUM.
Maybe I'll link it in the
Oh
description
yeah,
box.
yeah. You can.
Yeah,
I don't know why I'm having
that
a
might
hard
be
time with.
easier.
Uh,
Yeah.
we didn't even discuss the election, but
I mean, to be honest with you, I wasn't following the election that much. I don't think it
okay.
would have made a big difference.
Yeah, I mean
Whoever
it's
won,
not decided yet, anyways.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
but the thing is, I think the country's screwed either way.
I mean,
And
yeah, I mean it's
if I was
yeah,
a
you're
citizen of
right.
the U.S., I'd probably not be voting.
Yeah, like I mean the president is not supposed to be a king, like,
Yeah.
but like right now it's basically a king in because it has so much power.
Hmm. Well, all right, Cedric. Thanks for your time,
Okay,
and
thank you for having me.
yeah, have a good night.
All right, you too.